Hi, this is Jordan for Recap Animation. All properties are owned by their respective companies. Please enjoy. Previously we saw Toyohisa is teleported to another world where people like him are called drifters. After arriving injured, two elves take him to a place where other drifters are. There, he also meets Nobunaga and Yoichi. He then saves the elves' village with them. Meanwhile, the army of Ends belonging to the Black King attacks the city and conquers it. And then the Black King orders his men to find other drifters and kill them. Back to the story. Easy visits Murasaki, informing him no matter how many drifters he sends, her Ends would win. He should admit defeat, but then sees Murasaki has already left for a lunch break, leaving her to speak by herself. Toyohisa and the others tie up Olminyu, and she again explains about drifters, Ends, and her organization's mission. Yoichi wonders if they are drifters or Ends. Olminyu tells them they are not Ends, as Ends are inhuman and don't understand jokes, and nourish a deep loathing towards the world and detest everything, as they only seek the eradication and slaughter of humankind. Afterward, she tells Ends were gathered in the north, then pacified the monsters to ally themselves, and they began advancing into the humans' land. Olminyu then asks them for aid. Nobunaga tells her that's stupid, and no lord would give authority to their troops to some random outsider. Olminyu then asks what they need to do then, as only drifters can defeat them. So, Nobunaga says the drifters should take control of the state. Then he declares that they're beginning a campaign of conquest with Toyohisa as their leader. At the same time, her organization will support them in their plot to take down the empire. After hearing his declaration, Olminyu is shocked, but then considers it to have some appeal, considering how much more interesting threatening Ends' advancement is with the Black King. Toyohisa asks how he was chosen as a leader without his knowledge. Yoichi says it's because he sat on the crater the other day. Meanwhile, Grigori Rasputin reports to Black King that they have completely overtaken Carneades. As he reports the casualties, the Black King tells him to bring all the injured ones, as he will save them since they are his brethren. He goes to the injured people and starts to heal them. He then tells Rasputin to tell everyone that the northern wall has fallen, and those who didn't believe it or were afraid of humans will now join them. The Black King reveals that he wanted to save the humans, but they turned him down. So now he will save the demi-humans and destroy mankind. He tells the Ends they must go after the drifters and kill them, as they are their only enemy. On the other hand, Kano Neoshi's plane breaks, and he makes a rough landing in the forest. After getting out of the plane, several beasts appear, and he gets excited about a fight with them. Meanwhile, the elves debate what they need to do, as they had killed a Lord's Knight and will be executed for that. Even if he forgives them for that, as more than half of the wheat field was burned down, they don't have enough tax to give the Lord, so he will confiscate the whole harvest, saving them nothing. Suddenly, Yoichi appears and badly speaks their language, telling them they have a choice to rebel. Yet, as the elves are listening to him, they still can't understand him. Toyohisa then turns to Olminyu and asks her how she can speak their language. Olminyu reveals that Abe had made magic charms that granted them instant language fluency. Yoichi starts crying, while Nobunaga asks Olminyu to apologize, as it was challenging for him to memorize that language. Nobunaga questions Olminyu to tell him about the elves. She explains that the humans attacked, defeated, and subjugated them decades ago. She tells him they have a long life and a proud race. Hearing this, Nobunaga starts laughing, saying this is not information, and then instructs Toyohisa on what to tell them. Then, Toyohisa confronts the elves and asks if they are not a disgrace to their ancestors and a source of humiliation for their children, and if they do not wish to have their own state, will they grovel and die with regret, or will they run and die dreaming? Shara asks him why they would not be ashamed and not want their country back, and why they would be okay with being slaves, and tells Toyohisa they want their freedom. Therefore, Toyohisa tells them they will fight and get it back. Looking at Toyohisa reminds Nobunaga of his son. Still, Toyohisa tells him that he isn't his son, who is long dead. Nobunaga gets bleak and turns around, and Toyohisa thinks he may have been a bit too harsh, as he should be about the same age as his father, but Nobunaga then turns and mocks him that he isn't his father. They start fighting, but Shara stops them, saying that the human army may be coming to the village. Nobunaga tells him they They are coming for sure, and will be there in 3 days, and this village will cease to exist. Shara asks them for help, as they don't know how to fight. Toyohisa and the others are shocked to learn how old the elves are, and Olminyu tells them that the life expectancy of elves is about 5 to 6 times greater than humans. However, their rate of maturation is slow. Olminyu also explains that Ort Empire subjugated them along with the dwarves and the hobbits states. Still, right now, Ort Empire has currently engaged in battles on all fronts around the country. Nobunaga remarks that Ort will want to show dominance once they claim a state and ask Toyohisa what he will do as a commander and show him the tactics of the Shimazu clan. Toyohisa says they are going to let them in. Meanwhile, Ort's army of 200 approaches the village. As soldiers converse about the rumors about drifters, they arrive and find the whole village empty. The soldiers can't locate anyone in the village, and the commander is called and reported that the well is full of feces and the soil underneath the toilets was dug up and gone. Meanwhile, Toyohisa is watching from the forest in the distance with elves and says they will kill everyone tonight. Back at the abandoned castle, Nobunaga tells Toyohisa that the elves seem more fixated on making bows and don't want the armor and swords, so Yoichi helps them make bows. Toyohisa had cut the soldiers' heads and buried them, while Nobunaga threw the bodies in a pit with grass, soil, feces, and urine to make saltpeter. Olminyu tells them it's terrible to do that to their corpses, so Toyohisa tells her that he cleaned up those heads, buried them, then made offerings to them as human beings, and if she wants to pay respect, she can go there. She may think feces and urine are nasty, still, if they cut open their bellies, the inside would be flesh filled with feces. So he asks, could the soul dwell within a body filled with feces, or instead of in a head to which they pay respect? Olminyu thinks that the clear difference between these drifters and them lies not in knowledge, technology, or culture, but their views on life and death. Nobunaga then asks Olminyu if she can find sulfur, and she confirms that she can, but it will cost him money. Nobunaga says he will pay when they take 5 or 6 states. Yoichi is impressed with how fast elves learn to shoot well with the bow, and Shara comments they are natural-born archers. Hearing that, Yoichi starts shooting the center of the mark repeatedly, splitting the previous arrow each time to show that he is still better than them. They start calling him the best, and ask him to stop wasting arrows. Toyohisa announces they will attack the village this night, and afterward march towards the Lord's castle and kill him. Nobunaga is surprised, but Toyohisa tells him that he was told why there were no women in the village, as the elves reproduce only once a year. During that time, the women are taken by the Lord and his men. Nobunaga realizes this is an attempt to drive them to extinction. Toyohisa inspires the elves and tells them to take back their wives and children and stop living like animals. Take the heads of the men who reduce them to nothing more than livestock and reclaim their state. While watching this, Nobunaga mutters that Toyohisa is a natural-born warrior with the abilities required of a warlord, not a ruler. What he has is the power to compel people to fight. At night in the village, the soldiers are sleeping, while some of them were guarding them. But suddenly, there was an attack of arrows, massacring many soldiers. Then, suddenly, Toyohisa appears, goes up to them, and fights the soldiers. Nobunaga leads a small group on the horse cart. After arriving in the village, they build a small defense and throw the burning arrow at the village. Then soldiers try to stop them, but they are killed instead. Nobunaga comments that since Ort is at war, these must be third-rate soldiers, and killing 10 to 20% of them will make them run in fear. As the arrows are coated in feces, the soldiers want to wash their wounds not to catch tetanus, but the well is contaminated, and they realize this was planned from the beginning and the village was a trap. Toyohisa then moves between the whole armies and kills the commander, making the rest of the army run in fear. The elves celebrate winning, but Toyohisa tells them they still need to take the castle. Nobunaga realizes Toyohisa doesn't have a plan, but tells him he has one, and dresses everyone as the Ort soldiers. Elsewhere, the escaping soldiers fall into traps that are also coated with feces, and Yoichi and his group shoot down the remaining. Later, at the Lord's castle, the Lord is informed of the troops' return, and they let them into the castle. As the Lord comes, they reveal themselves to be elves and drifters, and Toyohisa asks where all the women are kept, and the sacred Lord points at the tower. The Lord wonders about his soldiers, but but Nobunaga tells him not to worry, as most of them are dead, and Yoichi is hunting the rest. While heading towards the tower, one soldier surrenders, but the elves still want to kill him. Still, Toyohisa tells them it's a disgrace to kill those that have given up and thrown down the sword. Still, after reaching the room where the female elves were kept and seeing what they were doing with them, he gets angry and says he was wrong and will carve them up, tear them out by the roots, and slaughter them all. Meanwhile, after taking over the castle, Nobunaga tells the elves to search the castle for all kinds of documents. Alminyu arrives, and she is surprised they managed to take the castle. Nobunaga points at a large painting of Adolf Hitler and wonders who he is. Alminyu clarifies he is the father of Ort, the one that founded it, but they still don't know if he is a drifter or ends. 60 years ago, he appeared out of nowhere and instigated people to rise against the government. With his speeches, he grabbed the people's hearts and started a rebellion, but after establishing Ort, he committed suicide. Nobunaga then gets notified that Toyohisa dragged the soldiers out and planned to kill them. Nobunaga rushes to him, remarking that given how beautiful the males were, it was obvious what they were doing to the females. He doesn't want Toyohisa to do that, and wants him to be honest and straightforward as he normally is, and leave the twisted and warped jobs to him. Just before Toyohisa can give the order to kill them, Nobunaga hits him from behind, knocks him out, and then orders the elves to kill the soldiers. The elves shot everyone besides one man, who kept telling them he never touched the women and was just transferred there because they didn't want to be like them. Toyohisa wakes up, shocked. Nobunaga tells him he woke up faster than he thought. Nobunaga also tells him he took care of the soldiers. He is too young to take command of this. He should leave the dirty work to him because his hands have already been tainted for a long time. Toyohisa suddenly punches him in the face and tells him he doesn't give a damn about any of that, and it's not his concern. The female elves were then sent back to their villages, but they also brought news of what had happened. Nobunaga wrote letters to each village as a proclamation. It touched readers' hearts, but manipulated their minds, asking them if they wanted their freedom and their state, he could give it to them. He also wrote a message that proved that Ort had reached its limits, attaching the contents of the documents collected from the magistrate's office, causing Elves Village to start a revolt and break away from Ort's subjugation. Easy sees news of the Black King's victory, but then sees the drifters had freed the elves and gets furious. Saint Gurmi, an influential aristocrat who owns a quarter of the Ort Empire, hears the news of how they are losing territory and realizes the country is done for. Saint Gurmi visits the leaders of Ort and informs them that their naval fleet that carried supplies for their army in the west has been destroyed. The merchant guild of Gubinin, led by Yamaguchi Temon, had destroyed their naval army. Saint Gurmi then comments about the elves, but the leaders don't take it seriously, making Saint Gurmi realize the country is indeed done. Saint Gurmi then leaves and meets up with the elves and the drifters. Elves from other villages meet up with Shara, wanting to join them. Nobunaga is angry that Toyohisa decided on a village head council system, otherwise he could have gradually risen to power and become a king. Toyohisa tells him that he knows that he doesn't understand strategies. Still, while Nobunaga can discern what they are thinking, he cannot read their hearts. Toyohisa knows that the elves will follow him, and he can become a king, but he is sure that one day they will turn their bows against him. Nobunaga also declares that he doesn't want to be betrayed anymore, but plans to make Toyohisa a king. Later, Shara tells Nobunaga that their blacksmiths can't replicate the rifles as they are too complicated to do so, but guesses the expert blacksmiths of the dwarves could. Yoichi prepares to train some elves who comment that when he is serious, he has a dreadful beauty, but Yoichi overhears it and explains that he is the youngest of 11 brothers of the Nasu clan, yet he is the ugliest one. Meanwhile, Toyohisa also shows his sword skills, telling the elves to put all their strength into one slash. As they wonder what to do if they miss, he tells them to die without hesitation. He later tells the rest he can't teach the elves his main swordsmanship as they couldn't learn it, and Yoichi comments they are good archers. The group then feels some eerie feeling of something coming. Then Joan of Arc and Gilles de Rais is then seen approaching as they got orders from the Black King to kill Drifter. Thanks for watching. If this series is the most liked in my current production of anime recaps, I will make a part 3. Also, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to help me make more content.